Baseball has its quirky rules. You've got pine tar not being allowed to use to grip the ball, and you can't have certain pieces of equipment on your body during the game. However, an infield fly, now that's a rule you never think could decide a game. But on October 5th, 2012, it happened. The Braves and the Cardinals played each other in a wild card game to determine who would go on to play the National in the divisional playoff series. And in the bottom of the eighth, Andrelton Simmons came up with a runner on first and second, and it happened. He hits a shallow pop-up to left center field, and Matt Holliday and Martel Ozuna were running towards the ball. And Matt Holliday was seen waving the ball off, saying he couldn't find it. And then sooner or later, the ball drops and it hits the ground. And at the very end of that play, you can see the second base umpire doing this. And everybody in the stands went silent when they saw that, because that's the signal for an infield fly rule. And there were two kind of moods that were going throughout the stadium. There was confusion because there was an infield fly rule being called and the ball was sitting in the middle of the outfield. And then there was anger because that potentially caused the Braves from having one, maybe two runs scoring, and they could have taken the lead late in that game. And so they ended up reviewing the play, and the call stood. And when they said that the call stood, chaos erupted. I mean, there was bottles, cans, boxes of popcorn, whatever was edible in that stadium, it was on the field. And I say it probably took the grounds crew probably 20 minutes, maybe 30, to clean that whole outfield up with all that garbage. And during the commercial break, you could actually hear Tim Kirkshin saying, you know, I never thought that a routine fly ball could cause so much chaos in one stadium. And that ended up being how the Braves ended their year. And what made it even worse for Braves fans is that their legendary third baseman Chipper Jones planned on retiring at the end of that season. And so that's how he ended his career, was on a game like that. And so you have to take into account that any rule in any sports rule book can determine the outcome of a game. No baseball fan thinks that an infield fly could ever affect it. I mean, it happens in the middle of the game. You'll see it in the third or the fifth inning, and it doesn't have any kind of impact. But in the bottom of the eighth, with that kind of pressure, you don't really see that happen very often. And so they ended up filing a protest, and it ended up not working. And so what made fans even more frustrated was that the Cardinals went on to win the World Series that year. And so that was one of those situations and one of those times in baseball that you don't really talk about as much because it's not as controversial as, say, a performance-enhancing drug usage or someone gambling like Pete Rose or whatever. But it's one of those situations that did change how the season ended for a lot of teams. The Braves had to go home after the wild card game, and the Cardinals went on to win the World Series after all that. And so that just shows you how any rule in any rule book can determine the outcome of not only a game, but how a game and how a season is ended. And so that's the story of how the infield fly rule affected the end of the Braves-Cardinals game on October 5th, 2012.